It's been a year since Deion Sanders had around 60 players leave in the transfer portal from the previous regime, and I still think people are confused whether or not that was the right move.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Like I said, making me your first listen. We're talking about Coach Prime's transfer portal process. It's been a controversial process, and I feel like a lot of people are getting really confused on what's right, what's wrong, and even where I stand, even though I feel like I've made that abundantly clear throughout the year. So let's reminisce. Let's dive back into what happened this past year. So if you guys don't remember, Colorado, Coach Prime takes a job, and it's like, okay, I'm taking this job, and it's going to be the transfer portal, my way or the highway. I want all of my roster, majority of my roster, to come through the portal. I value portal players more. I think they are easier to build around, or whatever it may be. That's his stance. That's what he says. He comes in, talks to the new program talks to the players at his new program, and is like, you know what, dudes, fellas, I'm bringing in my luggage, and it's Louis. I'm bringing in as many portal players as possible, and I want to have a roster full of transfer portal players from other programs because you guys are not good. You guys were not good. You went 111. It was 2022 when Carl Durrell, final year of the job, and it didn't work out for them, okay? It didn't. It's okay. It happens. It didn't work out for Carl Durrell. Coach Prime comes in, and he's like, I'm replacing all of you with players from the transfer portal. Happens to every program in the country. I'm well aware. It happens to every program in the country, whether it's Texas, USC, TCU, UNLV, whatever it may be. There is a program in college football where a player is told by a coach, hey, it is not working out here, and we think it's in your best interest to go play somewhere else, to enter your name into the transfer portal. Is that brutal? Is that kind of the dark side of football? Absolutely, yes. But football, college football, is and always has been a business. So while it sucks and it's unfortunate, it's part of the business. So I know a lot of people are thinking, I don't know why people are so confused about this, but yes, it happens everywhere. The reason that Coach Prime gets so much attention about it is because it happened for him on YouTube. It happened on Well Off Media. It was obviously broadcasted live, or not live, but it was broadcasted by Deion Jr. And we don't really get to see that aspect of college football at all because it's rarely ever recorded and then uploaded. It's just not something that happens. But was it a bad decision? Well, in short, no, it was not a bad decision for Coach Prime to do this. By all means, it was a necessary decision. And I've talked about this before, and I talk about it all the time, but I feel like people are getting confused because of the recent drama surrounding Colorado. I have a very clear stance on this, and I'm going to tell you right now, Coach Prime is not the bad guy, never will be, never has been, for having all those players leave via the portal. I think he had to do what was right for him. He doesn't get to play those games where it's like, well, maybe if I develop a guy here and there, we could go to 2 wins, and the year after that, we'll go to 5 wins. He is putting pressure on himself. There's pressure on him already for being a huge name that he needs to win right away. And I get that. And I totally understand why he did what he did. I've never once said he didn't need to get rid of all those guys. I think there were certain players where maybe they could have been good fits considering how many struggles the Colorado team had last year. But again, if Coach Prime felt that was the right move, then that was the right move for him. Every coach does it. That team needed a rebuild or a reload, if you will, and he's going about it his way. There's no problem with that. I have no problem with that. The only thing I had a problem with recently was him mocking or making it seem like he was mocking the stats of that one player who was standing up for his teammate, Xavier Smith, not Xavier Smith himself, the player that was standing up for him. Someone quoted his or tweeted his stats and was like, stay out of this. And Coach Prime commented, Lord Jesus, He explained yesterday that that was not how he meant to come off, and he saw how it came off, and he apologized to the young man via his content creator meeting thing. And I respect him for apologizing because the way it came off was he was mocking that young man's stats. Now, the Xavier Smith thing is a totally different conversation. I think people are still confused about the matter. Again, I don't care. I don't mind. It does not bother me in the slightest that Coach Prime wanted to replace all those players. What did bother me from the Xavier Smith situation, one, are all the fans coming after Xavier Smith for sharing his emotion or sharing, not his emotions, sharing his story. Should he have shared a story and should he have shared a story and expected backlash? Probably. Did it seem like he did that? Was he expecting backlash? No, which I think is a little naive on his part. I think Coach Prime has developed a very passionate fan base, if you will, and they've shown that they'll come at anybody for anything that they say about Coach Prime, which again, Xavier Smith was sharing his experience. It wasn't a slight at anyone. He was saying what was happening. He wasn't the only one in the story. That's the kind of the unfortunate part of it too. There was multiple players in that story quoted. Xavier Smith just happened to be the only one that was put onto a graphic by the Athletic social media team, which I'm not blaming the Athletic for that. Those were quotes. They put him onto a graphic like their boss said, and all of a sudden everyone was going after Xavier Smith while other guys were kind of just there making comments. But it's realistically, did did Coach Prime have to do what he had to do for his roster? Yes. Did Xavier Smith have to do that interview? No, he didn't. Was it unfair for fans to attack Xavier Smith as a person and harass him because he shared his experience? Yes, because again, and I've talked about this before, if you thought that over or around 60 players were going to leave a program that's coached by an NFL Hall of Famer, and you thought that we were never going to hear from that program or never hear from those players again, I have some beachfront property in South Dakota for you. Now, some people were like, I have beachfront property in South Dakota or Colorado for you if you didn't think we were going to come after him, which is fine, I guess, but I don't feel like it's necessary to attack the young man. He shared his thoughts. It is what it is. Move on. There's no need to be nasty about it. And I was wrong about Coach Prime's, I guess, post about the other player. It seemed like he was making fun of him. I think he realized that after the fact because he apologized and he said that's not what he intended for the social media post to be. The post was in fact intended for the account that posted it, and he said something along the lines of like, damn, he was really going after him. But it wasn't to mock the player, which I appreciated him coming forward and saying, because I think a lot of people, majority of people saw it and was like, why is Deion Sanders making fun of this player who's trying to chase a dream? And that's what it came off as. So I'm glad he addressed that. But again, the departure thing, let me reiterate, make it very clear. Deion Sanders had no obligation to coach any of those players. He felt they were not going to help him win games. He is going to be paid or fired based on how many games he wins. So I get why he made that decision. It happens everywhere. I'm well aware, but I was talking about the other aspect. I've never once said he made the wrong decision by building his roster the way he has. Now, if you want to talk about wrong decisions, maybe it's the way or the players that they're targeting that didn't work out last season. We're going to find out if he and his staff have an eye for talent, or do they need to reevaluate the types of players they bring in, because they've lost quite a few players from last year's class as well, the portal class included. So it's very interesting to see what's going on in Colorado. I just wanted to reiterate that, get that out there, because I feel like I was getting my take on it was being misconstrued as to I was disagreeing that it doesn't happen everywhere, or I never said anything when other coaches do it, because I don't care when other coaches do it or Deion Sanders does it, because it's a part of football. It happens. It was the other stuff that I was discussing. Two separate things. That's all I had to say. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Shedeur Sanders and his recruiting for the Colorado Buffaloes. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there is just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much more to get. Unique stickers you could trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash your buildings, or you can heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games, and there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the podcast. We are free and available wherever you get your sponsors, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Let's dive in. Shedeur Sanders, he's a recruiter for Colorado, apparently. No. There was an article written about Shedeur Sanders and his sort of recruiting efforts, and I think a lot of people got on him and Shiloh for posting which, I mean, they get on Shedeur and Shiloh for everything. It's kind of comes with the territory, I guess. And realistically, a lot of people were like, why is your starting quarterback recruiting players in the portal? Why is your starting safety posting like he's a recruiting coach? Do they not have people for this? And it's like, sure, they do. Yeah, it happens. Guess what? Players from all over the country are recruiting other players to transfer or go attend their program. Avery Johnson, the quarterback at Kansas State, did the same thing when Dylan Edwards was in the portal. And guess where Dylan Edwards ended up? Kansas State. Obviously, he wanted to play with his best friend and play for his hometown school and whatever it may be. It's not a problem to me when I see players recruiting, but clearly it bothered some people. Obviously, I think it's more so who was doing it, not like what they were doing. But this is what Shedeur had to say. That's always been mine. It's about getting the guys that we need to be able to have success. I like putting a lot of things in my hands. Like it's fourth down. The ball has to be in my hands in the final seconds of the game. It's got to be in my hands. I like having control over everything and even having control over my real life. He also said, and then they were talking about when this was him talking about, obviously, when Shiloh tweeted or posted on Instagram, defensive transfers DM me, offensive transfers DM Shiloh. And then he said, this is not last chance you, which kind of a weird. He got a lot of backlash for that. But whatever. I think this is my biggest takeaway from it. A lot of people don't like the Sanders family. They don't want to see them succeed. They think they're loud. They think they're brash. They do things differently. And people hate that. When your quarterback is actively kind of like marketing for the team, everyone's like, why is he doing that? I don't like that. It's like, guess what? No one cares. No one cares. We don't. Colorado has to do what they got to do. They're not a power program where it's like, okay, we're going to throw $1 million at this recruit and he's going to come here. Colorado's not there yet. Maybe they'll get there someday, but they're not an SEC school like Georgia who's like, you know what? We really want you. So here's a bag. Here's a McDonald's bag with all this cash. Now they don't have to do McDonald's bags. So that's kind of nice, I guess. They could just pay people up front. But it's one of those things where people wanted to come at Colorado because it was Shedeur, because it was Shiloh, because it was the Sanders family. And realistically, it does not matter if they're recruiting players. It helped. Like Shedeur is one of the first people I think that I saw reach out to LeJontay Wester on Twitter. And guess where one of the fastest players in the country is, who was, I think, second in the country in catches last year? Guess where he's playing? He's going to be catching passes from Shedeur Sanders in Colorado next year. So it's one of those things where I think people wanted to blow things out of proportion. They were like, oh my goodness, look at Colorado. They're doing that thing again where they just are being Colorado and they're just attracting all this drama, all this attention. And it's like, everyone does it. Players want to team up. We see it all the time in the NBA. It's a player empowerment thing. And guess what? It's a player empowerment thing in college football. Even though the players kind of just have always decided where they go, they did to decide even more now because of money, the transfer portal, and all that jazz. So if you were someone who was like, why is Colorado's two of their best players on social media basically trying to recruit more players or recruit whoever, guess what? It happens all over the country. So if it bothers you, don't know what to tell you. Get off your phone because it's really not that big of a deal. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the latest Colorado departure and where he ended up in what was a very, very interesting journey. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. I would go take a look at one Mr. Anthony Edwards. He's been absolutely torching the Denver Nuggets, and who knows what's going to happen to Jamal Murray after his sort of freak out this past game. Go take a peep at Anthony Edwards. He's balling out this playoffs, and I think he might help Minnesota contend for a title. So again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. I want to thank you guys for making me your first listen of the day. We are talking about all things Colorado, and the most recent thing for Colorado is one Mr. Omarion Cooper, who decided to transfer and is no longer with the program after just 1 year in Boulder. I thought he was going to be a really good addition. He played a lot at Florida State, and it was like, okay, Colorado's getting someone to pair up with. They're getting someone to pair up with Travis Hunter. They're going to have 2 starting caliber corners, and I think he struggled a lot. It didn't go necessarily well, I guess you could say, but he ranked 7th on the team in tackles while earning a 64 overall grade from PFF, which was better than what he was doing at Florida State. He gave up quite a few touchdowns over the course of his career, but I really was interested to see how he was going to handle that move to safety, because I thought he could have pushed for a starting safety spot. I really do. I think in corner, I don't know what it was. I just don't think his coverage skills were up to par, up to snuff, if you will. I think the thing that stands out to the most to me in the documentary was, I think it was the game against Oregon State, where Coach Prime tells him something and then says, get help over the top or something like that. And then all of a sudden they torch him the very seconds later for a touchdown. Didn't work out for Omarion Cooper in Colorado. It's okay. He returned back to Florida State though, which I thought was interesting. Colorado brought in 5 Florida State transfers last season. It was kind of like a Deion Sanders is rating his alma mater type thing. And now they only have 2. Derek McClendon declared and is no longer at the college level. And then, Bishop Thomas is someone who really, I feel like had a prime opportunity, no pun intended, to carve out a role for himself after not having one at Florida State. And Coach Prime clearly loved the kid and clearly wanted him to succeed and couldn't make it work. Ended up getting dismissed from the team. We saw it in the documentary. He struggled to kind of stay on the field. He struggled to do what he needed to do. And it was just one of those things where it's like, you are the person that's hurting you right now. And the coaches were like, we can't help you if you don't want the help. And I guess he just never really wanted that help per se. So now that leaves Brennan Gantz and that leaves Travis J as the 2 remaining Seminoles that transferred in. And so Colorado's transfer portal class from last season looks a lot different this year because I think they've lost a lot of talent into the portal. And I also think they over-evaluated a ton of those guys because realistically, it's one of those things where it's like Colorado put in a ton of effort in the portal last season to just bring in anyone that they thought would be interested in Colorado, which is fine. They went for that quantity over quality. And now we're kind of seeing the repercussions of it. It's like, okay, well, we valued getting people on this roster that weren't on this roster last year more so than being like, okay, you know what, this guy could play. He had a productive season at Fresno State or Boise State, whatever it may be. So Omarion Cooper is now out of the frame. Let me update you on where some of the other Colorado transfers have ended up, because it's one of those things where I guess it didn't work out for everybody, which is fine. But here's where everyone from this year's portal class has landed. So you got Omarion Cooper, Florida State, Dylan Edwards, Kansas State, Savion Wilkerson, running back, Georgia State, J.J. Hawkins, Marshall, Cameron Warchuk, long snapper, Washington. Those guys all found homes. Chimon Mateer, tight end. He's going to Arizona State. Savion Washington, Syracuse, Jaden Milner-Jones, SMU, Jack Bailey, Northwestern, Jack Wiltie, USF, Kendrick Breedlove, Purdue, Mikey Harrison, San Diego State. Casey Wiseman, quarterback, who was on the market for quite a while. FAU, Florida Atlantic University. Hankerson, Wells, and Gerard Christian Layton, Oregon State. And then Caleb Faria, Delaware State. So that's where all the Buffs have landed thus far. We're in the portal. There's still quite a few more. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 24 guys out of 41 that have yet to find their home. So I will keep you guys updated on everything you need to know about the Colorado Buffaloes moving forward. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen.